Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a New York based rock guitarist turned artist with a catalog worth listening to. Taking inspiration from Blink 182 and Green Day, he writes songs that'll bring you back to the 2000s and produces them entirely himself. Welcome, Nick.
How you doing, Ava?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. Living the
Happy to
dream.
have you.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Why don't we kind of start off with where your journey with music kind of all began?
Um, Believe it or if we want to go way back, believe it or not, it began with Guitar Hero. I grew up as a big gamer and I got into Guitar Hero, when it came out when I was like, I don't know, 6 or 7. I have no idea. It's such a long time ago, I can't even remember. But I don't know, I started playing Guitar Hero. I was really bad at it at first, but I don't know, something about it just drew me in and I kept getting better and better at it and eventually became that kid in my school, my grade that like everyone knew was like the shredder at Guitar Hero. Um and I grew up on a lot of like Van Halen and Iron Maiden, a lot of that like 70s, 80s metal and rock from my dad. So I was, Eddie Van Halen was my biggest inspiration. Um, so at the time, I was like, I want to learn how to play. I want to learn how to do that, play guitar. And so got a guitar, started taking lessons, and then it kind of just all kicked off from there. I was, caught on to, a lot of things very quickly. And then, come high school, I started writing my own songs and wasn't too much of a singer back then, but throughout high school, I started writing lyrics and eventually, getting cohesive songs written. And my buddy had a studio at the time. So I had a couple songs written and then I wanted to record them and ended up going, linking up with him and going to his home studio. And, that's where I kind of like that entire recording thing, opened up to me. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. You know what I mean? Like you walk in to a recording studio for the first time and you have no idea what's going on. You don't know what that is, what this is doing. You just kind of like, you just play it and you're like, all right, sounds good. But you know, fast forward a couple years, or not a couple years, a couple months after that, I ended up putting out my first EP in 2018. And that was half done at his studio and half done at like mine at the time because he ended up moving. So I had to get my own equipment and record in my own house. And I was like figuring out how to record and do everything while I was doing it. And it was not fun. It was a very rocky road, let me tell you. This stuff definitely takes time to get used to and learn. Especially when it came to, even just recording techniques. It's like the thing takes a while to like get down and master. But, eventually got better and better at it. And now, the album I just ended up putting out this past July, it was all done in my home studio that I'm currently sitting in right now. And I'm the producer and engineer and everything on it. So definitely been a long journey, but definitely happy where I'm at right now.
No, absolutely. And Guitar Hero, like I remember playing that all of the time. My roommate had a Wii in college, and so we played that even up until this past year. Like Guitar Hero was always my like niche game as a kid. I was never that great, but
Yeah.
it was always a good time, and I guess it kind of makes sense looking at where I am now. Um, so when you said you like started taking guitar lessons, started writing your own songs, when was kind of the turning point of this is something I'm doing with my free time, like something I just started doing as like a hobby? And when did that kind of develop into maybe I want to start releasing it, maybe I want to pursue like an artist career and like do that kind of thing?
Yeah, so like I said, it was like late high school. It was like end of junior year, all of senior year when I was, writing the songs and then got into first recording them. And at first, you know, when they were all said and done, I was like blown away of how it all sounded, and I ended up putting it out on like SoundCloud. Um, like here's the finished song, and like I look back at it now, and I don't have it on my SoundCloud anymore because they sound horrible compared to my newer stuff. They're demos. I think of them as demos. Um, at this point. But at the time it was like really exciting to have something you can call your own and have it, out to the public and have people listen to it and be like, oh, this is what I did, this is what I do. But I didn't really start pushing. I was in college, so first year uh, of college, right out of high school, I went to UMass. So I was there while I was finishing up the EP, and it released 2018. It was like January, February, so like the beginning of that year. So it was the beginning of my second semester. Um, and at that point, I was like, you know, a lot of people were like, they really liked it. A lot of my friends and like people that just like found me, and like I've had contact with, they were, big fans of what I was doing, and like, really kind of sparked something in me. And I hit a point where I was like, do I want to just kind of like finish this college thing, get a degree, and do something I don't necessarily love doing, or do I want to try to, push this a little bit further and see how far I could go? Um, and I ended up doing that. I mean, I ended up dropping out after the full year and trying to figure out what I wanted to do after that. And then you know, during that year and a half off, I was also working on new music, so I ended up putting out another EP and some singles and stuff like that. But I I wanted to learn more about the recording and producing and like the technical part of it, so I could do it all myself. Because I like being that, I like learning anyway, like firsthand. Um, so that was important for me to do, and I wanted to be able to have the skills to take what I hear in my head, um, and put it out onto speakers and headphones and for people to listen to and recognize and appreciate. So I ended up getting into Berkeley College of Music, but I ended up doing their online program because it was it was a lot cheaper, and it just made more sense for me at the time. So, while I was there, I was learning a lot through the classes I was taking and just a lot on my own. It takes time to learn mixing and recording, and it's like, it's like another language kind of. It's a whole um, it's a whole art in and of itself. And mixing that with artistry, it's limitless. And I've discovered that a couple years back, and um, it's just something that I could spend hours and hours doing every single day and not be tired of it, bored of it. And it gets me excited to wake up every day and do what I do. And besides being an artist, I have done, recording and producing and stuff for other people as well. And it's good to have a side gig like that for now. And while I'm doing that and juggling some other things in my life. But making money doing something like this is literally like, I never would have thought that was possible for me personally 10 years ago, thinking about it. But now I'm making it reality, and I can't be happier working at it every day. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's mixing itself and producing and everything is crazy. I studied that for 4 years in college, and going into college knew like nothing about it. Came from kind of the same place of, oh, I was writing music. I wanted to actually, I'm very like, not my way or the highway, but I like creatively things to be done my way.
oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I didn't like the idea of somebody else like messing with my stuff. And it was so, I just wanted to produce it and be able to do it all myself. It's a lot cheaper to do it yourself anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
you just got to invest in the gear for the long term. But even so, like graduating, I was like, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I graduated in
Right.
the spring. I still feel like I don't 100% know what I'm doing. And
But you do.
I too
That's
had a
good.
project like on SoundCloud that no longer exists because it just like, especially pre like actually knowing how to record your own stuff.
Yeah.
It's nothing, not that where my stuff now is where I want it to be, but that stuff is nowhere near where it should have been, so.
Yeah. Even my first EP, I tend to like not, you know, send people because it's older stuff
Mhm.
anyways. Like I'd rather send people the newer stuff or show people the newer stuff when I introduce them to what I do. But if they come across it, it's like I try to be like, yeah, it's a demo, or it's old, don't listen to that, or they're good songs. I'm not gonna say that they're bad.
Mhm.
It's just the recording quality and the mixing and I would say production, just leave it at that. It wasn't nearly as prominent back then because I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to translate what I was hearing at the time to do to to the audio medium, to speakers and stuff like that. And what I was hearing in my head, I didn't know how to put it in the DAW and do all that technical stuff. But now I do for the most part, and it's great, and I love it. So just something that takes a lot of time. And I'm
Yeah.
still not, a master at it. Obviously, I'm 23. I'm not, I'm no Chris Lord-Alge or Andrew Sheps or anything like that. Those guys are, masters of what they do, and they know the ins and outs of every little detail. And I'm just scratching the surface at this point. But definitely learned a lot. There's definitely way more to learn. Always is.
Always. Have you ever, whether you have done it already or thought about it, have you ever considered going back and like remaking some of those like older songs? Because if the songs
Yeah.
were good, then if it's just the production, then it's, you've progressed in that way. It's something you could do now if it was something that you felt was worth your time.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought about that a couple times, and I actually thought about redoing one or two of them for um the album that I just put out.
Hmm.
Um, but I just didn't end up doing it. I was like, maybe I'll do it in the future, for another project. But um, because there's the one song on the first EP is an acoustic song, and I think that one's pretty well done for the most part. That was probably the best one on the EP for, production wise. Um, and I think I would leave that the way it is, just because it touches the soul in the right way, and I don't want to tamper with that. But the other two or three on there probably could be, benefit from, a new production, a new take on it, and stuff like that. So it's definitely something I'm not going to write off. Um, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I've I've got I had an album that I dropped in 2020 that I took down because it wasn't there production wise, and I'm in the process of toying with redoing it. But it's because it's like your songwriting progresses as much as your like producing skills do. So it's hard to kind of sometimes look back at those old projects and see them as worth writing. Like they were a stepping stone to get to where you are now, but it's kind of hard to sometimes view that as something worth putting a lot more energy into when you put energy into it prior. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that one. It's just sometimes the songs will come back around. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong for stuff like this. It's just a matter of, what you want to convey to the listener. And if it does its job, then I think you did your job at the end of the day. Um, so
Yeah.
it's one way to look at it.
Do you approach the work you do for your own music in the same way that you produce or approach producing and mixing or whatever for others?
Um, I mean, it depends. In a way, yes, because I'm more of like it has to make me feel something. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. And I think a lot of that um, comes from the production and the mix, because I feel like if that's not there, then it could, a great song can be ruined by a bad mix. Um, just as well as an amazing mix can make a mediocre song sound way better than it might might not if it had a bad mix. You know what I mean? Um, so I try to approach things with that mindset in a way. And I try to, one thing I learned was like getting the tones and stuff that you want, in the song right at the source before moving on, and getting good takes, especially, vocal takes, because vocals are the most important thing for most popular genres. So I approach that as like the main thing, like vocals and drums. If the drum samples aren't good, then can make your song might not be good. You know what I mean? So if the drums, the vocals, and bass are like all fundamentally really good, that's the foundation for a good song and a good mix, and that'll help everything else kind of fall in line. It doesn't matter how amazing your, synth pad is, or your guitar tone is, or something like that. If those fundamentals are solid, then it's kind of hard to totally derail from there. Um, but yeah, like I said, production wise, like, adding, I found adding like quote unquote ear candy to choruses makes them sound a lot bigger and fuller, and touches the soul in the right way for me at least. Um, and it's something I noticed in my own music when I write songs, and start recording them. I'll hit the chorus and I'll just feel like something's missing, or maybe hit the last chorus and something just feels missing. And I add one lick a guitar lick or an organ, piano, something in the background, and it just like it's like done. It's complete. It's like that filled the void. So I approach that for most songs that have choruses. Like my one buddy does rap and hip hop, and I've been working with him for a while. Those his songs don't really have choruses. Some do. Some have like hooks that repeat. Um, but it's a little different. Like with rock and popular genre, other popular genres, rock, pop, acoustic stuff. Those things tend to have repeating choruses, and adding one layer at a time for each chorus definitely adds to that. And um, I don't know, it's just something that's ingrained in me, like building up to something. You know what I mean? You start from the intro and you build up from intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and however the song goes, but it has to build up to that last chorus or that last outro or something. Um, and it's something I always think of when I do projects and write songs and work on productions with other people and my own stuff. It's working towards that end goal. So
So I mean, yeah, you're right. It's all about the feeling that you kind of reach. That
yeah,
has to be your peak. If your peak's too early, then your song's too long,
yeah,
essentially.
got to keep it interesting too.
Is there something that you think most often inspires your songwriting? Like, is there a place that you take a lot of inspiration from, a theme you kind of find yourself writing about a lot?
um, I found myself writing a lot about time, which is why, I ended up naming my album Time Heals All because almost every single song has the theme of some sort of time in it. Um, because I think, time is one of those things that obviously is not going to slow down or change. And it's definitely an important thing. Um, and I don't know, just kind of, I tend to write about what I'm going through mentally at the time that I write the song, in the lyrics and what I'm going through in my life and with family, friends, or myself, or literally anything. I'm constantly writing about just life. It's not like, writing a song just about this, just about that. It's more so just like, at least for this past album I put out, most of it was about that, but just about things I was going through in my life. And it all had to do with, just had that theme of time. I threw it in somewhere, not intentionally, it just kind of happened. Um, and the album name actually came from the third song, the third track, which was Complete Now, featuring my buddy Jay Green. And he wrote that lyric in the song. It's the first lyric in the second verse. He says, Mama told me time heals all. And I was trying to come up with an album name and I had a couple, but then I like thought of that and I was listening to the song and I just like immediately knew right there that that was the name of the album. And I was like, congratulations, like the lyric you wrote is my album name. And he was joking. He was like, all right, I want all the royalty rights and all that stuff. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know about that. um, but yeah, I mean, most of the songs are about that. There's definitely the one song in the album called The One Ring, which isn't about that. It's actually a concept. I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. So I don't know what possessed me to do that. I think it was more so like I was listening to a lot of Neck Deep at the time. They're one of my favorite bands from the UK, pop punk bands, and that one of my top albums of all time is their first or second album, I believe. Life's Not Out to Get You, and they have a song in there that talks. It's called Kalima, and it's kind of about Indiana Jones. They make a lot of references to that, and I'm a big fan of Indiana Jones, so I like those like concept songs where it's about a movie or a character or something made up. Um, and I wrote the song in like Frodo's perspective. Um, and it kind of just worked. I don't know. I and didn't struggle to write the lyrics for that whatsoever. I started off with the first line, and then I kind of just ran from there, and it just all fit perfectly. And it was like it's a lot of people's favorite song of the album, which is really funny. Um, and it definitely is up there for me. But that was kind of the odd one out on the album, I guess. Um, and like I said, the Feeling Whitney was cover, and what went wrong was a cover, but um, they all have kind of melancholy, notes to them as well. Um, that I kind of find myself going back to and keep, it's another theme in the song and in the album is that emotion throughout it, kind of. Um, So, like I said, none of it was totally intentional. It's not like I sat down and was like, okay, I'm gonna write all these songs about this, 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 this. It was just kind of like what I was feeling, and it just kind of like was a theme, over the last year or 2 years of my life. So,
You kind of, I think, just answered my next question a little bit, but so you said that like it wasn't uh, intentional that you wrote these songs in this way, but when it came to the ones that you said were kind of like concept songs, if you will, like Lord of the Rings, Indiana Jones, were those more like with intention? Like I want to write a song that kind of captures like part of this franchise, like anything like that, or was it just those just kind of happened because you were in a Lord of the Rings mood that day?
um, it definitely was with intention. I'll tell you that one. For the One Ring. Um, but it fit with, the idea of like mental struggle, though. You know what I mean? Because 2020 and 2021 were very horrible years for everybody, including myself. I went through a lot. Um, and I'm not going to write any of that off. And that's a lot of, the emotion I put into the album was all the emotions I was feeling, those 2 years really. And it was just very hard for me mentally and um, definitely not fun. But I ended up capturing that in the music that I wrote for the album, and that I feel like what Frodo goes through in the movies is a mental illness, mental struggle. Um, with the ring and the evil that is lives inside him that's not really necessarily his fault or his evil. And I think a lot of people can relate to that in a way, because of the struggles that they uh, most a lot of I don't want to say most, but a lot of people went through in the last few years. So that kind of fit in a sense if you think about it like that. So I kind of wrote it from his perspective with the mental illness type thing, mental struggle, but it also kind of related to me. So I was kind of writing from my experience as well as him with the movie. So I would you know like the first lyric is keep it secret, keep it safe. That's what like Gandalf says to him in the first movie. So like those things are directly from the movie, like from his perspective, but it's there's other lyrics in there that definitely you can relate to your own life in a way if you been going through things as well. um so it's got a little bit of both.
Do you think by kind of painting it in the Lord of the Rings light rather than kind of just telling that story without that sort of like filter through it, if you will, do you think that kind of made it a more universal experience, or do you think that kind of like took away from it? Like, do you think that it added to the story that you were trying to tell by making it in that sort of way?
I think it definitely added to it. And I feel like both themes complement each other in a way. um like I'm going through something, Frodo is going through something throughout the whole movie, and it's like he has his demons. I have mine personally, and he's going through mine at the same time. So it was kind of like it felt more empowering and easier for me to kind of write about it, and it just had a good dynamic. I felt like writing about that during the time that I was writing it. Um, so yeah.
No, that I mean that makes sense. I think sometimes when we get to points of just we're telling these stories, it's easier to kind of tell them in a way that people may or may not kind of know already exists. Like you can't, I mean, not everybody listening to that's going to hear, oh, it's clearly like a Lord of the Rings thing, but it's like having that sort of like other story to it kind of adds to it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
how would you describe your music for somebody who's never heard it?
It's a good question. I definitely would reiterate, the 2000s theme, um, because that's I grew up in that era, so like that was my childhood, and that's just something that I still feel is you know still relevant, and it definitely is with MGK making his last two albums basically off the same type of theme, with Travis Barker, and I'm really glad that a lot of people hate on him, but I'm really glad that he was able to do that and make it such a big thing back into the mainstream. It's definitely huge, and definitely, means a lot for someone like me, um, and bands alike. But I'll definitely reiterate that the 2000s big anthemic sound is in my music. And it's more, I would say it takes my music takes a lot of different genres. I have some hip hop elements in it in some of the songs off the album. I'm sure you kind of picked up on that, some of those transitions. So I like that modern take to it with you know, drum samples and stuff like that. I'm huge, you know, in metal, so I like a lot of like big guitar riffs and big guitar sounds. Um, but the theme of you know, those catchy choruses always remains in every song that I have, and that's not something oh, sorry. That's not something I necessarily plan to do every time. It just happens. Um, and I pride myself in making big choruses, especially the last chorus in most of the rock songs that I have. Um, I just love the feeling of just that huge last chorus sound. You know what I mean? Um, and I feel like a lot of, you know, I think a good amount of the bands from the 2000s had that, but some didn't. It was more so like kind of like fast songs, and then it didn't, you know, it built up, but it wasn't as big as it could have been, I feel like. And that's just something that um, I love the most out of any song I listen to is a big last chorus, you know, because it leaves a big lasting effect on you. And if you like the song already, it just makes you want to repeat it. You know what I mean? Listen to it again, repeat it all day. So that's something, you know, that is also a big part of my music is those, you know, big anthemic choruses. And different little elements from other genres in the pop punk realm, I guess you could say. So glorified, I would say glorified Sum 41, Blink 182, and just a more modern take on it.
Seems pretty accurate based on what I've heard. Um, is there a release that you've had that like a song that you think best embodies who you are as an artist, the kind of stuff you write, just kind of your sound overall? Like if you had one song to show somebody to kind of sell them on you as an artist, do you know what that song would be?
Um, it's a really good question. I think, you know, if you asked me a couple months ago before my album came out, I would probably have a little trouble with it in a way, only because, well, even my album has, you know, half acoustic, half pop punk rock songs. So it's like a good split. So, you know, I have to pick between one of my big acoustic songs and then, you know, big production acoustic songs and then one of my one of my rock songs. But I feel like the main song off of the album that I had actually filmed a music video for is complete now with my buddy Jay. Um, I feel like we collaborate really, really well together. And you know, I wrote all the music in my lyrics. When you hear him rapping it, he wrote his lyrics. So I was the one that did all the music. But I think that like pop, hip hop, um, rock, pop punk, it's like a big infusion of genres. And like that is me. You know what I mean? Like I don't, you know, I don't just do just one thing, just rock. I like taking things from other genres and like incorporating it into something else and then be like, hey, this is me, this is mine. So, you know, the song starts off with like a poppy, like guitar riff, and then like the poppy, you know, layered vocals coming in, and then the drums come in, and then you hear Jay rapping, but then it switches back to me, we go back and forth. And then in the pre chorus, you get that like breakdown. Um, or and then you get like the, you know, drums doing the quarter note on the kick pedal and the guitars come in, the heavy distorted guitars, and then the big chorus comes in right after that. Um, and that's just kind of, you know, that's just me. I don't know. But that would be the song I'd probably show people and be like, hey, this is me. This is what I do. I think it captures everything. So
Nice little taste of a couple different things all in one. It's never a bad
absolutely,
way to be.
yeah, keeps it fun, keeps it interesting. So
Absolutely. So, how do you kind of balance your like creativity, your energy levels between your own projects versus like other people's projects? Like, how do you kind of balance that time wise, energy wise? How do you make sure that you still have enough to in you to work on your own stuff when you're like work technically is doing this stuff for other people?
yeah, I mean, After my album was released, I definitely took time off of my own stuff just because I was mentally just drained from, you know, going back and I ended up going back and remixing some of the older songs that I already released just to have them fit a little bit better with the rest of the album. That was kind of a pain in the ass because it was just those sessions are huge and back then I wasn't really too great with managing my CPU and balancing things out when I should have, and there's just a lot of plugins and stuff running, and it was a mess. So half the time it was impossible for me to even work on it because my computer just kept freezing. um so that was definitely annoying for two or three of the songs. But once I got that done, then I had to go back and put them all in the mastering project and then get all that situated. And that took me at least, the mastering took me at least like a month or so to like get right with everything. I keep going back in the mixes. It was just draining. So I took some time off of working on my stuff. I had a couple ideas written for new stuff, but I didn't really do too much with it. But I had a buddy that, you know, um, I met, and he's you know, um, a fellow musician of mine. He's a guitarist in my band. And he's really talented, and he writes his own music on the side too, and he wants to record his own project. So I told him I'd do it. And we started doing that maybe like a month and a half, two months ago. And all he sent me was all I had was a voice memo of him just like kind of like singing, mumbling in the background and playing the guitar progression of the whole song. And um, this goes back to one of your other questions, which was like, how do I what do I focus on, or how do I kind of interpret all that stuff for other people in the production phase? And it's just something I hear and just like immediately know what they want to do. It's something that you know I definitely am like grateful to have as a skill, because it makes my life easier in that sense. You know what I mean? I hear something and I know exactly how it should sound, or at least in my head how I think it should sound. And more often than not, 9 times out of 10, they agree, which is really nice. So for a couple sessions, I was putting a lot of energy and time into recording, and we got most of it done. He still has to lay down vocals, but um, I haven't been working on stuff for other people every single day. It's been kind of slow now at least, but in the past I did projects for mixing for people like online and stuff. But I'd have those done in a matter of a couple days. Um, I like to work fast too, so it's like I don't like dragging things out. I'm not really when it comes to work in this environment and in this medium, I don't like to like procrastinate, and I don't it's not that I don't like doing it. I can't. Like I literally like want to work on it. You know what I mean? Like it excites me to like work on music. So it's like I want to get it done as soon as possible and hear their feedback and just get it done. Like I want to do it. And I always learn something from every project. At least, it's one thing or two things, three things, doesn't really matter. I always learn at least one thing, which is good because every project I do, I keep those things in mind. So like I said, I've been kind of all over the place, but definitely working on new stuff um, for myself as well as a couple small things for some other people, but nothing too major at the moment. But try to balance it as much as I can the best way. So
Kind of going in a different direction from that. What made you decide to do the album thing rather than, oh, I'm writing these songs there? Like what made you kind of piece them together as a full project rather than being like releasing them as singles, having them kind of stand alone? Like obviously you released some ahead of time, as one does, and but then like put them into the album. So what kind of made you put them into the album rather than just kind of leave these as one-offs that you could kind of space out over time?
yeah, I mean that's definitely something I thought of, and I was going to space them out. That was my initial plan, was to space it out maybe like every 2, 3 months and then release a single or something like that. Maybe even like every month or so. I don't know. And sometimes I think back and like, should I have done that? But at the same time, it's like I didn't, I haven't released an album or a full body of music yet. Um, and it's been a couple years, and I kind of wanted to have something out that seemed like a big, cohesive body of work that I could call my album, you know what I mean? Um and like I said, I released like maybe like three or four singles before that after my second EP. Definitely got some, decent hits on them and plays and, stuff like that. And it's definitely hard to get some traction. But I feel like I had maybe like decent amount. And I wanted to, you know, well, the other thing is like I said, half the album's a good six songs or so are acoustic, and the other half are rock, and they're all a little bit different. So it just seemed weird, I guess you could say, in a way, for me to kind of like release an acoustic song, then release a rock song, then release like two acoustic songs in a row, and then release two. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't. It just wouldn't make much sense in that sense, I guess. Um, so I was like, screw it. Like I'll throw it all in one thing and kind of lay them out in a way that makes sense. And I think that the dynamic of the songs in the album fit really well. I start off the album with that opener song that's like super upbeat and has that like intro guitar riff, filtered effect, and then it goes into a couple more upbeat rock songs, and then it kind of slows down a bit, and then it gets a little bit darker, um, and then it kind of ends on like a heartfelt melancholy tone. You know what I mean? So it kind of has like this arc to it. It starts off super great, super happy, gets a little bit more emotional and dark. Then it picks up a little bit, it kind of goes up and down a little bit, and then it kind of leads to that end. Like I feel like the last like four or five songs are all like kind of in that same emotional realm, I guess. It just made a lot of sense to me, in that, you know, perspective. So I ended up putting out the album.
No, I mean, I'm a big advocate for the albums. I would rather work on a collective project than just do one-off songs, unless those songs that I write are they just stand on their own because they're not about something or written in the same kind of way as some others. And when you said it kind of like acoustic and then rock and then acoustic and then more rock, like going back and forth, and that definitely makes sense to kind of put it in one where you can kind of piece them together to flow together rather than just have songs that are coming from two different directions, like stylistically.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you could open for any artist, who would it be?
Um, I mean, the obvious answer, I guess you could say, would be Blink. They're just, you know, um, I've seen them live two or three times. I've met them in person. Like they're just super great guys, and their music is ingrained in me of who I am and what I do. It's just kind of, I grew up on it. Like that's all I've listened to. Not all I've listened to, but like I've never stopped listening to them since I discovered them at whatever age that was, which was very long, very, very young. So, um, so they're definitely a candidate, Yellow Card would be another one that a lot of people they only know like Ocean Avenue by them. But I listen to almost all of their music, and I like their album after Ocean Avenue is my favorite, which is Paper Walls. And I take a lot of inspiration from them as well. And their like guitar riffs and their catchy melodies and the way they write songs as well. So they're a big one. And then State Champs is a big band that I take heavy inspiration from. That's from my hometown, Albany, New York. And they're getting pretty big in the pop punk scene. Um, and they've definitely made their mark. And their newest album is called Kings of the New Age, and it's funny because they literally in my mind they literally are kings of the new age. If I had to show anybody, pop punk music that wasn't me, um, and they didn't really know much about the genre, especially in 2022, I'd literally just show them State Champ's new album because it's literally, in my opinion, a pop punk masterpiece front to back for 2022. And I've met them numerous times. I've like family that are like friends with the guys in the band. And they're just super, super great guys. And they're literally one of probably the best bands I've heard live. Um, you know, you don't see it often where you go to a show and the artist sounds exactly like they do on the record, but they're like one of those bands that never fails to do that, and it's they deserve way more recognition. So I would be honored to open up for them on a tour or something or whatever it may be. So
I think, I mean, Blink 182, obvious choice. I think those others have great justification to them.
yeah,
Speaking of Blink 182, though, what made you decide to put that cover and then the Feeling Whitney cover, two very different artists, by the way,
yeah.
put those in the album? Like, what made you? Well, I mean, also just kind of what made you cover those songs in general? Was it like you had already made these covers and then decided to put them in, or it was like, oh, maybe I could use like a cover song or two in here, and those are just the songs that you chose? Like, what was that kind of process?
Yeah, so the blank cover I did was I did that maybe like I don't know, I'm trying to remember. It was at least a year and a half prior to the album. And that was I put that like on SoundCloud, just I don't know, I just recorded it one day. I like really liked the song. Um and I just wanted to do a cover of it, so I did, but when I was putting the album together, I had it and I was like I think I was gonna release it anyways as like a single or something, just you know. So I was like, well, why not just throw it in the album? It kind of, you know, if to me it fit in a way. And it's funny because a lot of people commented, made comments about that song. They're like, "Oh, I really like this song." I'm just like, "It's not mine, but thank you." Like, like going back to earlier, they don't know, but like, it just fit. I don't know. And it made sense for me to kind of put it in where I did on the album towards the end. And I went back and remixed it and just threw it in there, and it fit. But the Feeling Whitney cover. That's another song I really enjoy by Post Malone. It's one of my top Post Malone songs. I think he's a fantastic artist, by the way. Um, and I don't know. I was at work one day, my part-time job, and I was just like humming the song or something. And I was like, you know what? I think this song would kick ass if it was like a upbeat, like hard rock song, you know, like a Sum 40. In my head, I'm like, while I was listening to it and then kind of like figuring out how it would sound as that type of song, I just thought of like, how would Sum 41 do it? I don't know why, but that like you could kind of hear it in the cover that it's like very like inspired from like a Sum 41 um realm because they take heavy inspiration from metal too and hard rock. Um so they infuse that into their pop punk, music. So I literally knew exactly how I wanted it to sound and how I wanted it to start and go and end. Like I just knew it like right away when I was at work. So I came home, I literally laid down I did the drum tracks and I laid down all the guitars and it just maybe a couple hours and that was the foundation of the song. And it kicked ass and I was like this needs to go on the album. I need to do something with this. And for a little bit on TikTok I was posting videos. I was like day 1 until Post Malone sees it and comments or something. Um and I've been getting kind of lazy with TikTok lately. I haven't been posting much, but I kind of want to keep that up. Hopefully, he can someday hear it, and I know he'd appreciate it because he comes from that type of background as well. He's a big rock appreciation guy, so um, I think he would be um, very appreciative if he heard that. Hopefully, I can get it out there to him, but we'll see. Definitely a long shot, but um, that's just something that kind of flowed, and I just kind of did, and it turned out to be exactly what I wanted it to be. So.
No, I mean, I think they made a lot of sense. I think when I listened to Feeling Whitney, I actually didn't really realize it was that song until it kind of got to like the chorus part where it was the more notorious section of the song. And then I was like, wait a minute. And then I looked at the title and I was like, oh, this is exactly what I thought it was. I was like, I know this song, but I was like, I don't know it like this. And then I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
once you see because there's no other song out there that's like Feeling Whitney. And so once
Yeah.
you see that, it's like, okay, here we are.
Uh-huh. That's funny.
Um, what is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists? Like, what is it that makes Nick stand out in the crowd compared to others?
Um, I feel like fundamentally, you know, from a production and music standpoint, is, the fact that I have this huge rock sound from just like me. Like it's all me. Um, on the records or the recordings at least. Um, I am the artist, producer, engineer. Like everything you hear is just kind of me in my studio doing it. You know what I mean? Um, and I've discovered a lot of independent artists and solo artists over the last like year or two, and I just haven't really quite found many people that kind of do the same type of thing as an independent, I guess. Um, usually it's like, you get a lot of like hip hop and stuff like that nowadays, and it's great. A lot of that stuff's great. Um, and a lot of pop. I've seen a lot of like pop, hyper pop, something I kind of discovered. I didn't even know that was really a genre or like a subgenre, but I guess it kind of fits the theme of it. But I've seen a lot of those types of independent artists, but no one that has like a full like kind of like band infused sound from just them kind of. Um and especially like I said, the production style that I have with incorporating techniques from, you know, production techniques from other genres and stuff like that and putting it into the rock genre. Um and kind of making it my own and experimenting with different sounds, different instruments, and um, I take some inspiration from a lot of like 70s, and 80s, and like those synths and stuff. Like I have a lot of those in the background on a lot of my songs you may not even hear. But if I were to take it out of the mix, out of the song, it would change it completely. Um, so like I said, I take inspiration from all different eras, all different genres, and kind of put it into that. Call it call it mine. So.
I think there's also just an aspect of duality between some of the stuff that you have because you get that rock element and you have that acoustic. Like the album's a great representation of that. I think, like, as I know for myself, and I've seen it with some others, that it's like you have that sort of main sound that you gravitate towards, but then you might have like a song or two that's outside of that. But you kind of have like two contrasting sounds almost going on, but they work well together. It's not like you hear two different songs and they sound like two different artists. It's like they sound like the same person, but it's just done in two different ways, which is, I think, a really kind of unique aspect to the album itself and even on a bigger scale, you as an artist.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of, you know, pop punk songs do that though, or songs, bands do that where they'll, you know, have an entire album of rock and then maybe a couple of acoustic songs and then do like a whole acoustic like EP or something. Like, I know State Champs has an entire EP of acoustic songs and two EPs actually. They do a lot, so they do the kind of the same thing. So I take inspiration from that as well. I really like that duality. Um, kind of in that sense. But like even like a Did I Remember has a lot of acoustic songs. Especially in like Common Courtesy. That album is really one of my favorite albums. And there's a couple of songs that start with acoustic guitars and then kind of transition into a huge rock song, or just all acoustic. And even like Foo Fighters has stuff like that. Like one of my favorite Foo Fighters songs is But Honestly, and starts off 2.5 minutes of just acoustic and Dave singing. And then the whole last minute or so is just like this huge band buildup, you know. So I don't know. I just really, there's something very intimate about acoustic songs, like a singer-songwriter acoustic type thing that I definitely also, want to I make myself a part of, um, kind of capture in my own way as well. Um, so yeah, I don't want to leave that out either. So
No, 100%. Um, what kind of impact do you want to have with your music, with your artistry, the whole combination?
um, at the end of the day, I just want to be able to, touch people's lives and be able to like touch their soul in a way. And um, you know, I'll listen to a song. It doesn't matter what mood I'm in. Sometimes I'll listen to a song and if it just hits me at the right time, the right part of the song hits me at the right time, and whatever headspace I'm in or whatever, it'll make me like tear up and like almost cry. And it sounds like super sad. It's like, oh, well, you're crying, but like it's not like that. It's like overwhelming sensation of like emotion. I don't know. I'm sure, at some point, most people have experienced that to an extent. Um, and I get that a lot when I listen to music in the car and stuff. It's just part of who I am, I guess. I don't know. I get those intense emotions when I listen to the music that I listen to daily. But even like mine, when I first, you know, do like the initial mix of a song I'm working on, and then I listen to it in the car, I'll get that like huge wave of emotion. It's like, something that I'm writing coming to life, hearing it for the first time. It's very overwhelming in that sense. But you know, and I've heard this before is, some of my songs have done that for other people, like I forget who I was talking to, but they were like, I was listening to one of your songs and I literally was like about to cry or something like that. They said something along those lines, and I'm like, perfect. I'm like, this is exactly what I want. Like, it sounds horrible because I'm like, yeah, cry. Like, no, it's not like that. It's like my music touched them, um, whether they think it did or not. It's just like, you know, some people that don't study stuff like this don't recognize why or what's going on. But like, at Berkeley, I studied some of this stuff, so it makes total sense. And being an artist and someone that strives for um, those emotions and in my music, it means the world when people say something like that. And I just want my music to be able to touch people in that sense, emotional sense, and to help them through whatever they're going through, and let them know that they're not alone, because that you can interpret a song any way you want. If a song's written about a specific person or specific um, event or movie or whatever you want to call it, topic, we'll just say topic. You can literally take that and interpret it to your anything in your life that you're going through. I do that all the time, even if it's not meant for that. But that's the beauty of it. So I just want to be able to have something, give it to somebody, and say, make a story of your own, I guess. Um, and I feel like I've done that with at least a couple of my songs, and it's been, proven and made aware to me. And it means the world. It means that, I did my job at the end of the day. So
No, absolutely. I mean, we write it from a place of emotion. It just makes sense that if it connects with somebody else in that same kind of way, that's going to be somewhat of like a reward, essentially. It's like it's a rewarding feeling to be like the feeling that I was putting into the song is what somebody else got out of it. It's like it kind of makes it all worth it at the end of the day.
absolutely does.
So I think that brings us to the last question, which is also just the name of the podcast itself. Why music?
I think without music, the world would be a much worse place. And I think people take music for granted in a way. They always just turn on, get in the car, turn on the radio, and expect music to just be there. Um, and I don't think people realize how important music is to their lives. Some people get in the car and they jam the music on the way to work or home from work, or if they're going through a breakup, like they have that music there. But if if you ask that same question to other artists, like, I'm sure they give you the same answer in a way. Um, like for me, if I didn't have music, I don't know where I'd be personally. I really don't. Like I said, I went through, struggles the past few years, and even just growing up, like everyone goes through stuff. And at the end of the day, for me personally, music was the only thing that was always there. Um, and it's something I never want to take for granted. And like I said, I think people don't realize and are um, as appreciative as they maybe should be of it, and what it brings to the table and offers them in their lives. Um, so without it, it would just, my life personally would just feel completely empty in a way. Um, I'd feel unfulfilled and feel like there's something missing. Um, and it's just ingrained of who I am at this point. And I'm a very creative person, and that itches my creative itch, I guess. And it hits in all the right spots for me. Um, so in being able to wake up every day and, call myself an artist, call myself a producer, whatever label you want to put on me, um, is amazing because I'm invested in that realm, in that world, and I'm able to offer those things to people. Um, you know, I'm not saying a lot. People, there aren't people out there that are not appreciative of music. There's obviously a lot, but just taking a step back, it's just something I kind of realized over time is like, music's always there, right? And then it's always there for us when we need it. And and you look at something like where, you know, the whole Spotify and artists thing, how they're like getting, not robbed, but like not, you know, artists are mad about pay and stuff like that. And a lot of your favorite artists are struggling, and we're the last 2 years, and it's like, people expect them to just put out music and make great music and then keep doing it and keep doing it, keep doing it. But they don't realize the toll it takes mentally, first of all, and second of all, um, the toll it takes on them, like to just live. Like, if they're not making money constantly from touring or something, and t-shirt sales and streaming and album purchases, they're not going to be able to keep doing it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of those things I feel like isn't totally just appreciated enough, and invested in enough, I guess you could say. So for smaller artists, when those times come, especially, COVID, they struggled very hard. Um, so I think it's something that a lot of people need to kind of like take a step back and look at it from the outside and kind of, appreciate it more. And what these artists do day in and day out. Even like, I just wanted to mention quick too, like, I was watching a YouTube video the other day about like artists that, end up taking their own lives. Like, look at Chester Bennington. He was one of my biggest inspirations. Lincoln Park's one of my favorite bands as well. Um, and he was going through struggles too, and a lot of people didn't really know. You know what I mean? You don't know, and it's like, you know they don't pay attention to it, or sure his bandmates knew to an extent, but um these people that are putting out these amazing bodies of work and music, they are struggling too with something, whatever it is. And I think it's important to realize that, it's like all these people are putting out music about heartbreak and like mental illness, and like everyone's like, oh, I relate to it and I love it, and they expect to go to their shows and like scream the words back at them, but they're not taking a step back and realizing that, like, why they wrote it in the first place. You know what I mean? Kind of got off topic with that, but it kind of comes back to, just the whole music thing in general. um so why music for me is, I feel like I have something to offer to the world, and I have the creative skill set to do that day in and day out, and I'm very grateful I'm able to do it. And I have a lot of support from family and friends, and I'm super grateful for that. Um, and I just want to keep getting my music out there to more and more people, and hopefully I can, help people through something, even if it's one person. Um, just the thought of that is very makes me very very emotional, but um, that's just my main goal at the end of the day, is just get it out there and help people, and hopefully it can touch their soul.
No, I think that's a great kind of message, a great purpose to kind of have behind all of it, and a great reason for ultimately why music. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next Tuesday for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.